Superpowered farts and an island of mutated beasts don't make for an easy trip down memory lane. Not even a vanishing spell can wipe these box office flops from history. The late British actor John Hurt played a number of iconic parts in his long career, with key roles in classic fantasy and sci-fi franchises like Doctor Who, Alien, Hellboy, and of course, the Harry Potter films, where he played Garrick Ollivander. But there's at least one film he starred in back in the 90s that failed to take hold and become the next big sci-fi film, instead becoming a flop. That was the 1993 movie Monolith. The film focuses on a pair of police officers who are investigating the passing of a young boy when they stumble across a possible alien invader with the ability to shapeshift. Hurt portrays the government agent who wants them to leave the case alone. Though it does have some genuinely intriguing ideas, it all comes across so generic and ham-fisted that it becomes a whole lot of nothing. Bad direction, bland characters, a confusing script. We've seen it all before in bad B movies that were better than this. Hurt is certainly capable of playing a chilling, even terrifying villain, but he's woefully miscast in Monolith and would probably have wanted us to forget he was ever in it. Helena Bonham Carter would join the Harry Potter series in The Order of the Phoenix and return for its 3 sequels as the villainous Death Eater, Bellatrix Lestrange. It was a part that seems like it was tailor-made for the frenetic actress. One-time partner of Tim Burton, she has also starred in more than a half-dozen of his films, including Planet of the Apes, Alice in Wonderland, and Dark Shadows. Across her career, she's ventured into just about every genre and dozens of acclaimed movies. But if she could wipe one of them from existence, it has to be the strange dental comedy Novocaine. The film is about a dentist who gets framed for a murder after an encounter with an alluring patient, played by Carter, who seduces him and turns his life upside down. A tonal mishmash, the movie dances between black comedy and outright parody, making one increasingly numb to its ambitious premise. Whether it's supposed to be a genuinely suspenseful thriller or a comic farce, you're never quite sure, but when it's all over, you just want to rinse and spit.
You see, that's the nature of attraction. You find yourself doing things and you have no idea why.
Before Harry Potter, Alan Rickman already had several well-known roles under his belt, including the Sheriff of Nottingham in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and the villainous Hans Gruber in the action classic Die Hard. But he'd reach a new stratosphere in the Harry Potter series, portraying the dark, enigmatic Professor Snape, a wizard who seemed to blur the line between good and evil. Already a Hollywood fixture, the role further cemented Rickman as one of Hollywood's finest stars. But Rickman wasn't without his duds, and few can measure up to the disappointment of Mesmer, a bizarre biopic about Franz Anton Mesmer. Mesmer was a doctor who peddled his theories in hypnosis and mystical energies in the 18th century. The result is a film that's about what you'd expect from a period drama based on a forgotten figure in pseudoscience history, even if Rickman is his usual charismatic self in the title role. Still, the actor alone often can't save a film, though he tried.
This is very kind of you.
Before Ralph Fiennes played a heroic old-fashioned super spy in The King's Man, the actor who starred in Harry Potter as Lord Voldemort led a flop called The Avengers. It's a movie that Fiennes and pretty much everyone else involved would be thrilled to forget, as it's one of the most notorious film failures of the 90s. Not only was it a box office dud, but it also came into theaters with high expectations and was absolutely terrible, wasting a star-studded cast and all its potential. Fiennes played the secret agent John Steed in this big-budget adaptation of the hit British television series of the same name. But despite having all the ingredients to be the next big action franchise, The Avengers was a total disaster and a clumsy, charmless film that didn't exactly electrify the box office like its MCU namesake. Fiennes himself slammed the movie, telling The Guardian, "You don't go to work thinking you're going to make a bad film. I went to work thinking, great, let's reinvent the Avengers, which I loved as a kid. It's only now that we look back and groan." Actor Tom Felton came to fame thanks to his casting in Harry Potter, though he'd had a few roles before joining the J.K. Rowling epic. After leaving Hogwarts, Felton struggled to achieve the same success as the franchise's trio of young stars. One film he took on in the wake of Harry Potter that he almost certainly regrets is the horror movie Nightwolf, a film that takes itself way more seriously than it should. Nightwolf centers on a group of teens in a cliched situation, stuck inside a house during a dark and stormy night. One by one, they get picked off by a mysterious creature, a werewolf. Of course, this comes as a complete shock to audiences who didn't look at the title of the movie or pick up the very obvious clues that the filmmakers probably thought were ever so clever. Felton plays the stock stoner character Gary, one of the Beast's first victims. So if you are checking this one out because you love Draco Malfoy, don't expect to see much of him. He might be glad he didn't have to stick around for the film's entire shoot, but he probably wishes he hadn't been there at all. At least he was smart enough to not return for the director's next movie, Strippers vs. Werewolves.
Bet you loved that, didn't you, Potter?
Joining Hogwarts for Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, actor Brendan Gleeson played Mad Eye Moody, who is at first the disguise of Barty Crouch Jr. In subsequent films, Gleeson returns as the real Mad Eye and helps Potter defeat the Dark Lord Voldemort. A renowned Irish character actor, Gleeson's career goes all the way back to the late 80s, and he's gone on to feature in classics like Into the West, Braveheart, and 28 Days Later. His career also has its flops, though, and One Actioner may be the film the actor would love us all to skip. Though it boasted a decent cast, Turbulence is decidedly not a 90s classic, no matter what the filmmaker's lofty ambitions may have been. In the film, Gleeson stars as Stubbs, a bank robber being transported by plane, alongside another diabolical criminal named Weaver, who manages to break free of his U.S. Marshal escort and take over the flight. It may have been a compelling starting premise, but with flat performances and unimpressive stunts, Turbulence crashed and burned. The film's stark similarities to Con Air, released the same year, definitely didn't help matters either. Gleeson spared himself the indignity of appearing in the 2 direct-to-video sequels, which were somehow even worse. A member of the Order of the Phoenix, Remus Lupin started out as a mysterious figure in his first appearance, with many believing that it was he, in werewolf form, who had been terrorizing Hogwarts. But after the culprit was revealed to be Peter Pettigrew, Lupin became one of the greatest heroes of the Second Wizarding War. He was played by actor David Thewlis, who outside of Harry Potter has had plenty of hit films. But the disaster, The Island of Dr. Moreau, was most certainly not among them. A historically bad film, it was led by Marlon Brando as the eponymous Doctor and boasted a star-studded cast. But it's Thewlis who sparks the film's story, as his character crash lands on the island and discovers the experiments of the demented Moreau, who is creating bizarre, mutated, half-human creatures. Thankfully, the film's failure doesn't rest on Thewlis' shoulders. That's down to Brando's laziness, the film's haphazard construction, and a muddled and meandering story. But perhaps most importantly, it's just plain boring. If Thewlis could back out of this one retroactively, we have no doubt he would.
This is the most outrageous spectacle I have ever witnessed. Look at yourself.
Actress Imelda Staunton went from little-known character actor to most hated woman in households everywhere when she gave her first performance as the prudish professor, Dolores Umbridge. But just 4 years before she came to fame in the wizarding world, Staunton made a little film she now probably wishes she could make disappear, The Virgin of Liverpool. You'd be forgiven for thinking this one was a grown-worthy adult comedy given its title and place on this list. But it's actually about a statue of the Virgin Mary. The film centers on a young girl who discovers the statue when it is being discarded by a priest during renovations of his church. While her family is annoyed by the statue she brings home, it gets attention from the community for apparently performing an active miracle in a chip shop. Aspiring to be a sappy, sentimental family movie, it ends up a groaner of a story that looks incredibly cheap. So it comes as no surprise to learn that the filmmakers made the movie just a few weeks after finding a random script on the internet. Thankfully, it wasn't bad enough to prevent Staunton from being cast as one of Harry Potter's most delightfully loathsome characters.
Deep down, you deserve to be punished. Don't you, Mr. Potter?
Even more renowned than Dame Maggie Smith, Sir Richard Harris led the first 2 Harry Potter pictures as the wise, gentle wizard Dumbledore, before the star's unfortunate passing. But decades before he stepped onto Hogwarts grounds, Harris appeared in some of Hollywood's finest films, from classics like The Guns of Navarone and Mutiny on the Bounty, to modern greats like Unforgiven and Patriot Games. But of course, like everyone else on this list, he's got at least one that he would take back if he could. In Harris's case, it's the adventure movie Tarzan the Ape Man. a modern reinterpretation of the classic novel by Edgar Rice Burroughs. The film is not the rousing, tree-swinging adventure fans might have wanted or even expected. That's because, oddly enough, Tarzan himself isn't even the star of the movie, with the story instead focusing on his female companion, Jane, and Harris playing her father here. With Bo Derek cast in the role of Jane, the producers turned the film into little more than softcore titillation. It's packed with enough uncomfortable adult situations to make even John Waters blush. Derek was impressed with Harris's professionalism and performance, despite the horrid script. She even told Entertainment Weekly, "The picture was doomed, but Richard gave it his all anyway." Just 11 years old when he was cast as Ron Weasley in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Rupert Grint hasn't achieved the same level of box office stardom as his co-star Emma Watson, nor has he appeared in highly acclaimed art house films like Daniel Radcliffe. He's preferred instead to stick to roles in prestige television projects, such as the ABC Murders with John Malkovich and Snatch, a series adapted from the Guy Ritchie film. But back when he was just getting started in Harry Potter, Grint also starred in another children's fantasy film, Thunderpants, which is about a boy who can't stop farting. Needless to say, it didn't become a cinematic classic. While Grint does not take the title role in Thunderpants, he does play the best friend, a child scientist who helps the tutor deal with his worrisome wind-breaking. In fairness to Grint, this ridiculous romp isn't all that terrible. It's a fairly fun children's flick that will at least leave you laughing from the ludicrous, lighthearted gags. But with Grint attempting a more serious and dramatic career, this can't be a movie he's proud to trot out for his new fans to watch.